Scuderia Ferrari will file the 2024 Formula One Brazilian Grand Prix as an event to forget the trip to the 4.309-kilometer Autódromo José Carlos Pace in Brazil, which turned into a pool, went worse than anticipated, and ultimately, the Maranello team returned home, having lost 6 points in their battle against McLaren for the Constructors Championship, now needing to make up 36 points in the 3 remaining rounds on the Formula One calendar, starting with the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is up next. The team knew that the Brazilian track would not suit the characteristics of the SF-24 single-seater, but expectations within Ferrari's management were higher than what was ultimately achieved in São Paulo. The new track surface, which did not reduce the presence of bumps, made the pre-race preparations less effective than usual. Simulations had shown a more competitive Ferrari than the one we actually saw, but after Friday's single free practice session, it became clear that the Italian side would be on the defensive with a car poorly suited to São Paulo's track. The rain complicated matters further, highlighting the red car's difficulties with wet weather tires. The Canadian Grand Prix had already exposed these weaknesses, and the careful setup work that allowed the SF-24 to expand its tire performance window and better manage wear did not help with the intermediates. In Saturday morning's sprint race, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz finished 5th and 7th respectively, after a more promising 3rd and 5th in the qualifying session, suggesting that Ferrari was struggling at the Interlagos circuit even more than expected. With the parc ferme reopened before Grand Prix qualifying, there was hope of salvaging a difficult weekend, but McLaren secured a 1-2 finish in the sprint event. Charles Leclerc, with his usual honesty, admitted after Sunday's race that the setup had been chosen in collaboration with the Maranello team, and they had believed it was heading in the right direction. However, it turned out to be the wrong approach. They simply lacked the pace and were not competitive. He mentioned that in the qualifying session they were not too bad with new tires and low fuel, but during the race it was difficult to drive and challenging not to make mistakes. The situation explained by the Monegasque driver is clear, but perhaps it is interesting to understand what went wrong for the Scuderia, even accounting for the pit stop that put him in traffic, forcing him to race in dirty air when the hope was to attempt an undercut. With weather forecasts predicting heavy rain both in qualifying and the race, it was not unreasonable to opt for a softer mechanical setup to handle the numerous bumps with a car that could more easily absorb them. The idea on paper might have been right, but in practice it didn't work. The SF-24, with a less stable chassis, became harder to drive, with too rapid and unpredictable changes in behavior. Ground effect cars are very sensitive to ride height, and any variation can lead to aerodynamic losses. Allowing the suspension more travel made the red car more difficult to control. The theoretical advantage of better copying the bumps was overshadowed by the changes in the SF-24's behavior. This also explains the strange off-track moments for Carlos Sainz, both of which ended against the barriers and with damage. The Spaniard crashed in Q3 and during the race. It was unfair for those who accused him of celebrating his magnificent victory in Mexico City too much. Carlos Sainz found himself dealing with an unrecognizable red car, to the point where he never found a proper race pace. Ferrari missed the Spaniard's points, but the misstep should not have consequences, as we will certainly see the Spaniard competitive again, starting with the next round of the season, the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is scheduled to take place over 50 laps of the 6.2-kilometer Las Vegas Strip circuit in Nevada, USA, on Saturday, November 23rd. Completing the analysis of the previous weekend, we must acknowledge Charles Leclerc's added value in securing 5th place. The Monegasque did a lot to finish the Brazilian Grand Prix ahead of the McLaren cars of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, therefore limiting the damage at the end of the São Paulo weekend. Charles Leclerc extracted from his natural talent a race that statistically only amounts to the 16 points of 5th place, but actually holds much greater value. With a wild Ferrari where it would have been easy to make mistakes, he kept the Italian side's hopes of still competing for the Constructors Championship alive, a title the Scuderia hasn't won since the 2008 Formula One season. The McLaren cars, considered by everyone to be the most competitive due to their adaptability to any track, finished behind Charles Leclerc. Therefore, the Monegasque driver's Brazilian Grand Prix should be reassessed in light of these facts. And before ending the analysis of the 21st round of the season, it is worth adding one last element. According to rumors, Max Verstappen opted for a stiffer setup on his RB20 after the sprint race. Is it fantasy? Is it the truth? it certainly helps fuel a myth that is materializing. Looking beyond the recent Brazilian Grand Prix weekend and making a first overall analysis of Scuderia Ferrari's current Formula One championship, we should point out the clear improvements under the management of team principal Frédéric Vasseur. In fact, the French manager, in his second F1 campaign at the helm of the Ferrari racing department, has already surpassed the best season of Mattia Binotto in terms of results and performance. After surpassing the 2022 Formula One season in terms of victories, thanks to the recent triumphs in the United States Grand Prix with Charles Leclerc and the Mexico City Grand Prix with Carlos Sainz, Ferrari's combined 20 points from the São Paulo sprint race and the main Grand Prix events was enough to exceed their 2022 points total in the constructors' standings. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, with the valuable contribution of Oliver Bearman in Saudi Arabia when appendicitis sidelined Carlos Sainz, have already scored 557 points, compared to 554 in 2022. 2 years ago, 22 races were held, compared to 24 scheduled for 2024, but so far only 21 have taken place, meaning there is one less race than in 2022. However, it is worth noting that there were 3 sprint races in 2022, with points awarded from 1st to 8th place, while 5 of the 6 scheduled sprints have already occurred this year, with just the one in Qatar remaining. This means that Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur, in his second year, has already surpassed the best season of Mattia Binotto's tenure in charge of the Maranello team. In 2022, Ferrari was very strong in the first part of the Formula One season, but later struggled with power unit reliability issues and a summer technical directive, namely TD039, that ultimately cleared the way for Red Bull and Max Verstappen to claim the first title of the ground effect era. Ferrari's 2024 Formula One championship has been different, with the only similarity being dominance at the Albert Park circuit in the Australian Grand Prix. 2 years ago, the F175 car won in Bahrain, Australia, Great Britain, and Austria. The SF-24 has won in Australia, Monaco, Monza, the United States, and Mexico. Charles Leclerc finished the 2022 Formula One campaign with 308 points in second place behind Max Verstappen, with 3 wins and 8 additional podiums, 5 second places and 3 third places. Currently, the Monegasque driver has 307 points and is in third place, 24 points behind Lando Norris, with 3 wins and 8 other podiums, 2 second places and 6 third places. Carlos Sainz finished the 2022 F1 season with 246 points compared to his current 244, with 2 fewer races in his case, and Ferrari is already ahead thanks to the 6 points earned by Oliver Bearman in Saudi Arabia. The Spanish driver has also won 1 more race compared to 2022, 7 podiums so far in 2024 compared to 9 in 2022. The performance between 2022 and 2024 is very similar, but it should be noted that this year's competition is much fiercer than in 2022, a season in which Mercedes won only 1 race and McLaren was far from the technical benchmark it currently represents on the starting grid.